In this video, I'm going to have a look at iteration. Okay, so iteration means to repeat something. So in the exam, when you see the word iteration, I just want you to think about loops. All right, so if you loop something around, you're repeating something. So iteration is a loop. Now in programming, there are 3 different types of loops, but today we're just going to focus on the for loop. Now, if you want to have a look at the other 3 types, or the other 2 types of loops, I should say, you can have a look at the iteration PowerPoint on the class website. Okay, it's in the programming folder, and you can have a look at those. All right, but today we're just going to be focusing on the for loop. Now, for loop is a count control loop. That means it's going to do something a set number of times. That means it is only used when you know you want to repeat something a set number of times. So if I know I want to repeat something 3 times, I think, yes, I'm going to use a for loop. Let me just close this down here because it's in the background. I don't want that. All right. So if I know I want to repeat something a set number of times, I'm going to use a for loop. If I'm not sure how many times I want to repeat something, I don't use a for loop. Okay, for that I use a different type of loop called a while loop, which we look at in the next video. But if I know how many times I want to repeat something, we use a for loop. And this is how it works. So I start off by writing the word for loop, and I give a variable. All right, this variable can be anything, and we'll look at that in a little bit later after I finish this loop. Okay, we'll change it around so I can show you. So we say for, and in most cases, if you see any examples, it will use the word I or X, or the letter I or X, I should say, and then we say in range. All right, then I open brackets, and I say when I want to start, I put a comma, and I say when I want to finish, and I close my brackets, and then finally I end it with a colon. Colon is very important because the colon will indent my code for me. And just like in an if statement, everything inside the for loop needs to be indented. If it comes out of the for loop like that, it's not indented and it will not register it as part of a for loop. Okay, so it won't repeat it. So in here, I'm just going to write something really simple like print I. Okay, so for I in range 1 to 10, print I. So hopefully when I run this, it will run through the loop and give me my number as it runs. So I'm just going to run this, press F5 and press run, and you'll see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we didn't write 9, did we? We wrote 10. So why has it only gone to 9? Now, in a for loop, although we're repeating from starting at 1 and finishing at 10, it doesn't actually do the last loop. Okay, so it finishes once you hit 10, it stops. It doesn't do 10. It just finishes. Okay, so if I wanted to count to 10, I would need to write the number above 11. And now if I run this, F5, you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can also do other things with for loops. I can say I want to do 1 to 11 and I want to do it in multiples of 2. So if I run that, you'll see 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, multiples of 2. I can also start at 11 and finish at 1 and do that in multiples of minus 2. Now let's just do it counting backwards to start off with. And you'll see down here, when it runs, taking a little bit of time to run there. Sorry, that's why, because I haven't told it how to count. You can do it minus 1s. And then run it. And you'll see it starts at 11 and it counts all the way down. Remember, it won't do the last count because it stops when it gets there. So if I wanted to count to 1, I'd have to put 0 there. Okay, now I can also count back in multiples, so I can say minus 2 and I can run that. If I run that, you'll see it starts at 11 and counts down in multiples of 2. Okay, but in for loops, we don't only have to use numbers, we can also use words, and I can look for words. So let's change my program a little bit, and let's just say name, don't want to put that there. let's put name, that's my mouse, is equal to input, and then enter your name. Okay, let's put a space so it looks better when it prints out. And then I'm going to change this code now, just inside of here, and I'm just going to say for I in range, and because name isn't a number, that's not going to work. All right, so let's just have a look at this. If I put for I in range name, right, if I more specifically, if I put 1 to name like we did before, and if I run this, you should see that. Let's put the word Bob, and you'll see I get an error here. Okay, so this is because I'm trying to count, and name is a string object, so Python does not like that. All right, so we're not going to say in range in this time. If I'm going to go through a name, I'm just going to say for range in name. All right, so I'm just saying, sorry, not range, for I in name. Okay, so it's going to follow the I while it's in name. All right, so if we look at what this is actually going to do, okay, so just get my pen on, and we have the name. See if I have the name Bob again, and it's saying for I in name Bob. So if I say, okay, I is like more like a pointer or an arrow, okay, and for I in Bob, so it's going to start there, and it's going to print out I, so it will print out B, and then it will go on to the next one, and then it will print out I again, which is O, and it will go to the next one, and it will print out I again, which is B. So hopefully I will get Bob written out in one line like that. Okay, so let me try and get rid of this ink, which doesn't want to rub out for some reason. Give me a second. Clear off. There you go. All right. So let's run this code and see if it does what I said. It's going to ask me my name. Getting down here, so I'm going to write Bob, and then you'll see it runs through Bob, and it puts every number, every letter on a different line. All right. Now you might think, well, I don't really want to put a letter on every single line. All right, so I could maybe change my code and say, okay, so we're going to have enter your name, but maybe I want to have maybe num is equal to int input, and then say how many times do a name, and remember, if I close open two brackets, I need to close two, even though it looks a bit funny at the end when there's two brackets next to each other. And then in here I'm going to say for I in, and then we're going to go back to the range again. I can use range this time because this is an integer, and we'll put for I in range num, and then we'll print I. So this time, well, we're not going to print I here, we're going to print name. Okay, so this time it's going to repeat how many times I say it, and when it asks me for how many times I want to say my name, and instead of printing out the I, I'm going to print out my whole name. Right, so let's see if this one works. F5 to run. What is your name? Keep the Bob, because it's simple. How many times do you want to repeat your name? 3 times. So you'll see Bob, Bob, Bob. Okay. Now, you can also have a scenario where you have a for loop inside of another for loop. Okay, so this is where it gets a little tiny bit more complicated. Okay, so let's have a look at it, and I'll talk you through it as we go. So we're going to say for I in range of num. So that means whatever number I type in when this line of code is ran, it's going to repeat what is underneath here that many times. All right. And then in here, I'm going to put another for loop. So for, and I'm going to put x this time, for x in and I'm going to put name. And so for x in name, and then I'm going to print x. Let's just have a look at what this is going to do. So for I in range of num. So whatever I type in when this line of code's ran, whatever number I type in, it's going to run whatever is in this loop 3 times. And the thing that is in this loop is another loop. So it means that this loop is going to run 3 times. All right. And then this loop is going to run in the length of name. So whatever name I write, it's going to run through that name and print out x. So really, whatever, if I say, for example, it says enter a number, and let's start from the start. If I say it enters a name and I enter Bob, and then it will take Bob and it will take whatever I enter when it says enter a number, and it will do this that many times. So if I enter for a number 3 and I've already put the number Bob, it will run through Bob 3 times. Each time it goes through, printing out x when it goes up there. All right. So if I get my pen out again and try and explain it a little bit better using a diagram. Okay. So if I type in, let's say if I type in Bob again, and then I type in the number 3, it will hit this line here and it will follow num. So it will do whatever is underneath here 3 times because I entered 3 here. So it's going to do this 3 times. All right, now this code is just the same as we did before. So it's going to go through Bob, so it takes the name Bob and it puts a pointer there, and the pointer is x. So it's going to look at Bob, it's going to print out x, so it's going to print out B, then go to the next one, and it's going to print out O, then go to the next one, and it's going to print out B. Okay, but it's not going to stop there because it's doing it 3 times, because we put 3 here, and this loop here is going to act 3 times because we wrote 3 in the number. So it's going to go back to the start and point at the B again, and write B, go to the O again, point O, go to the B again, point B, and then it's going to go through and do it the 3rd time. So we should end up with an output that says Bob, Bob, Bob when I run it. Okay, so let's have a look and run this and see if that's what I get. So I'm going to press F5 to run and look down here, saying enter my name, Bob, enter the number of times you want to say your name 3 times, and you'll see it runs through Bob, Bob, Bob. All right, so before we finish, I just want to show you, if we go back to, we'll take out this one, and just to make it run simpler, we'll have this one. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to ask my name, and it says for x in name print x. Okay, so it's gonna run through my name and print out x on different lines, just like we did before. Now I just want to, so we'll run it and see. And what is your name? Down the bottom here, Bob, and it's going to run through Bob. Okay, now I just want to look at this x that I put here, and if I change that to I, and as long as I change this to I, so as long as it matches, and if I run it, you'll see it does exactly the same thing, Bob, and it will run fine. Now I can change this to whatever. I can say, well, I'm going to change this to fish, and if I put fish in here, it will run. Bob, there you go, it runs. All right, I can even change this to something that makes no sense. Not that fish makes much sense, but I could change this to something like, don't want to make it too long because I'll have to type it again, HFUF. That doesn't mean anything, it's just random, HFUF. And then if I run this, you'll see it asks my name again, Bob, and it will run no problem. Okay, so it doesn't, as long as it's not a keyword that already exists in Python, it doesn't matter what you use to run or to keep track of the count in your for loop. All right, I would strongly recommend you stick to one character or something like that makes sense in your code, like name or number or whatever you're using in your code, just so you can keep track of it and you have less likelihood of getting an error. All right, so that's the for loops. And if you go to the class website, I'll leave a link in the description of the video to the folder that the problems are in, and you can have a go at the list of for loop problems. And I'll see you next time when we look at while loops.